vault over at medfordknife.com. I know a bunch of you participated in that. Thank you. There's a couple items left. There was a bunch of cool knives in that. Hope you guys dig. I think we're gonna try a whatnot live stream sometime in the next couple of weeks. So that should be kind of interesting. Um, I've had a lot of people over the years talk to me about business. A lot of guys in the knife business, a lot of famous knife makers, some of the biggest knife companies in the world that you all know the names of. I've talked to their company heads and we've talked about business. They've been to my factory and we've talked. We talk on the phone. We text. We bounce ideas off one another. I learn a lot of stuff from everybody, and I think people pick up a few things from me. I'm one of the lunatics who's kind of really open about everything. I'm really open about how I function. I'm open with myself. When I talk to other people in the knife community, their politics are very similar or more extreme than mine. A lot of times they're more extreme than me, but they don't want anyone to know, and they're worried about every last dollar. And honestly, I feel sorry for my countrymen who punish me for not being forthright. Uh, I don't agree with the Apple company on a lot of stuff. I still have an iPhone. I don't agree with Disney on a lot of things. I went to Disney this weekend, had a great time. So we have to be able to disagree and get along. And I've had a lot of people just blackball me for my ideology or for my vocabulary or for my swearing and whatnot. And it's just, you know what it is? It's cowardice. If you block me because you don't like my knives, cool. That's, I mean, kind of silly. It's just knives. If you kick me out of your company because you don't like my politics, that's just simple, small-minded, fascist, oppressive, authoritarian. It shows a level of cowardice and, oh, I'm not afraid I fired you. No, that's afraid to look at yourself. It's afraid to have conversations. It's afraid to potentially be wrong. It's afraid to let anyone else be wrong or right. It's just fear. Which brings me to the topic at hand today. People ask me all the time, Greg, I want to do this. Greg, I want to do that. Greg, I want to do this. A lot of guys come out of the gate blazing, and I just had somebody reach out to me. And I've had so many of these calls and texts recently. I said, why not? I'll just shoot a video on how to do this. So if you're going to start a knife company, don't go borrow money. Don't mortgage your house. When Ramon Chavez got in the knife business, I saw his first knife. He handed me his first knife and he said, what do you think? And I opened it up. And I don't tell you guys this to be like, oh, look at me. I'm some fucking kingmaker in the knife business. I'm fucking nobody. But I will tell you this. Ramon showed me his very first knife. And I said, what kind of grinder do you have? And he told me. And I said, what kind of tools do you use? And he says, I use a drill press. I said, you did all this with a drill press. And I'm telling you guys, it was a folder. It was a titanium frame lock folder. He has a drill press, and it was a simple bench grinder. It wasn't a knife grinder. Simple. Like, I'm telling you, it was less than $1,000 worth of tools. And he made a really nice folder. And I said to him, quit your job. The knife world deserves to have somebody like you making knives in the knife business. He'll tell you this. I know he will. Because Ramon and I wouldn't say we're close. I wouldn't say we're dear friends. We're absolutely friends. And we absolutely, every time we see each other, hugs and how you doing and hope you're doing well. And I really think very well of him and his family and everything they do. I think Ramon's a great guy. But he's one of those guys. He had one knife. And he put it in my hand very humbly, almost the same way he is right now. And he said, what do you think? And I said, what tools did you make? I had that conversation with him. So people ask me all the time, and I give them I give them a conversation for where they're at. So if guy says to me, hey, I've drawn my first knife. I want to go in the knife business. I'm thinking about, I talked to my wife about quitting my job and I'm going to the knife business. I go, stop what you're doing. The first year I made knives, I went to work every morning early, made knives all day. And then I owned martial arts schools at the time. And I went and taught martial arts and fought at night. And I did that for about a year. So knives all day, karate at night, martial arts, Kempo karate at night, and then after a year I was buried. So here's what happens if you borrow a bunch of money. You don't know enough yet, and you will spend money on the wrong things, and you will learn very expensive lessons that can be very cheap if you stay small. So if you don't even need a grinder. You could go get some like shit grinder from Harbor Freight and figure out how to make flat blade knives, okay? And it will be harder, it won't be ideal, but you can do it. And then you're going to learn a lot of expensive lessons for cheap. But if you go borrow money and rent the building and start buying machines, you don't know shit from fucking Shinola. It's like, it would be like me taking a guy who hasn't done any like alpine climbing and say, hey, we're going to leave Tuesday for Mount Everest and go hike Mount Everest. Bring everything you'll need. How the fuck's a guy supposed to know how to do that? I mean, are you fucking kidding me? He'll die before you get to the base camp. So all big, making knives is a big journey. So the first thing I would say is don't spend a lot of money. You definitely need a drill press. It can be a benchtop drill press, but it's got to be a drill press with a pretty solid chuck. I recommend at least a 3/8 or half-inch chuck drill press. Something really solid, at least a jet. But I mean, you could get away with a shitty Harbor Freight drill press. You really could. It's going to teach you, working with minimal tools will teach you how to overcome major challenges that when you get nice tools won't be a challenge. They'll only be a minor challenge. And you already know about them before you cut a bunch of parts and eat it. I mean, I've made $100,000 mistakes. People tell me what's it take to be a president of a knife company like Medford Knife and Tool, and I say it takes $3 million worth of education. What? It takes $3 million worth of education to be where I'm at right now. I know lessons about the knife business that most guys running knife companies don't know. Because most guys didn't found the company and do the growth. And most guys aren't actual knife makers. There are a few who are. And for those guys, no mystery to this, but we learn expensive lessons as we scale up. The bigger you get, the bigger you swing, the bigger your mistakes are, and the more fucking costly they are. I mean, I've had multiple $100,000 lessons. So, there's things about, and when you think you know knife making, the knife market will crush your fucking balls. So I'll tell you, at the bare minimum, what you need is you need some kind of grinder, any kind of 4-inch grinder, flat grinder that and you can make, 20, 30, 40 knives. So let's say you got some Harbor Freight grinder and it costs you $500, and you got some Harbor Freight drill press and it costs you $250. You kind of have enough stuff now. You need some abrasives and you need some files. You need some sample. You know what you need? You need a heat treat oven. Now you don't need a heat treat oven if you start making knives with like some tool steel. O1, just use some O1 tool steel or some what's the other stuff I like? But you can use some regular tool steel or some 1095, and you can learn. You can either have someone in your town who's got a water jet cut some blanks out for you, which is the easiest thing to do, or you get a cheap bandsaw and you cut them out yourself very carefully so you don't cut your fucking fingers off. But that's knife making. Knife making is really fucking, you can lose your fingers making knives. But you don't need a lot of money. For $1,500, you could be making pretty nice knives. That's probably the biggest thing. Now, once you've kind of think you can kind of half-ass make a knife, then you got to figure out how to put a sheath on it. You got two options: thermoplastics with Kydex. All you need is a toaster oven. You can use the kitchen oven and drive your wife a little kooky with your garage shop, and that's one way to approach it. And nothing wrong with that. The only thing you need for that is a arbor press and some rivets and a hand drill. I mean, super easy. Or your drill press, right? So you don't need a lot. If you're going to work with leather, all you need to do is order a hide from Tandy. You'll need some needles. You'll need some thread. And you need to just start watching some videos on how to do it. Now, my grandfather taught me how to work leather, so I learned to work leather when I was less than 10 years old, and I'm very comfy jumping into leather. But that wasn't very scalable for me. But if I was a single maker making individual knives, I'd make really nice leather sheaths, and I would use cheap tools, and I would have them be craftsmanship, handmade oriented. And then that'll teach you how to make knives really well. And then when you kind of know how to make knives, you can start thinking about faster ways of doing things and thinking about scale. And those are lessons you learn. And every time you get bigger, you learn a whole new slew of lessons. So for less than $1,000, you can be a knife maker. And I would stick to making leather sheaths initially because all you need to do is buy a hide and some thread and a needle and and the rest is really cheap. So think about that, and then as you start to scale up, the very next thing you want to get is you want to get a purpose-made knife grinder. I recommend. Now, I use Burr Kings. I'm a commercial operation. I use machines that have a lot of factory support. But Travis Wirtz makes a really nice grinder that's very flexible, and a lot of the flexibility he has is kind of built in his system, and the Burr King stuff is all add-on. So I think the Burr King is really good. It's probably a little more expensive in the end. I'm not sure. You could price that out, but I know there are other people out there. I know there are other options. Some guys make their own grinder, but after you've sold some knives with your makeshift shop in the garage and you're starting to feel like a knife maker, an upgrade to any knife grinder is going to be like feel like you bought your first Cadillac. It'll feel great. Um, and then the very next thing I do after that, and oh, like I was saying about using either is like what is it called? Like either A7 or A56, any one of the air cooled tool steels. You can heat those up and air cool them. The 01 and 1095, you can heat up with a torch and dip them and quench them in oil, and you can actually come up with a decent blade that way. You don't need a $2,500 Paragon electric furnace. Now, once you're going and you're making knives and you've kind of got that rustic, old-fashioned knife making thing down, and you want to up your game, and so tactical equals technology. So what you want to do is you want to start upping your technology. So get yourself after your basic shop, the next big upgrade you want to do is for a professional grinding machine. I recommend either Burr King or Wirtz, Travis Wirtz, made here in Arizona. Actually, he's great. And then the next thing you're going to want after that is you're going to want a Paragon heat treat oven. You have a Paragon heat treat oven and a professional grinding machine, and you can be in the knife business. And a good drill press, and you can make folder. I made all my folders originally. I made them all, all by hand. Holy shit! I can't even believe it. It's really hard to do, and I did it. But it teaches you so many things. So that's what I would tell somebody. Like, if they were going to say, "Hey, Greg, I'm not a broke dick, so I could kind of stroke a check for some of this stuff," I'd say go get a full Burr King setup with surface grinding options. I'd go get a Paragon 24-inch by 24-inch heat treat. I think they call it a double barrel oven. I would get a really good steel, super heavy, like welding workbench, and I'd weld a knife vise onto that, so you have a thing to put a knife in to either wrap handles or do handles. I would get a good dust filtration system by Grizzly that's got some tubing that goes to your machines to keep the dust down. Wear a really good breather so you're not inhaling a bunch of dust. And then either have a local water jet shop. Personally, I like to have a water jet shop cut blanks for me because I just didn't want to be tired and slip and cut off a finger. I've been around shop tools my whole life, and I'm really into minimizing my exposure to getting hurt and injured. So I would definitely recommend getting stuff water jetted. If you don't have access to someone like that, you can buy a hunk of steel from Niagara Specialty Metals out in Niagara, New York, and you could send them drawings, and they'll cut blanks for you. They'll send them all to you. Be a little more expensive, but not bad. And now you've got all these blanks cut out, and but don't do a bunch. Do one model and make a complete knife, and then have somebody who's got courage to tell you the truth review it for you. Have me review it, because I'll be like, hey, this part right here needs some thinking. Hey, this part here's a little clunky. Your lines are a little awkward. Go look at some art. Read some stuff on divine proportion. Look at some stuff on architecture. I recommend everybody who's a knife maker, you need to get into Frank Lloyd Wright, books on architecture, on design theory, kind of philosophy of structure, and all that stuff's it just all adds. I've probably sat in 150 museums around the world. I was really blessed with a gracious mom who wanted to expose me to a lot of culture. So everywhere I went, I tried to get into a museum. So I've sat, and I used to watch this show on PBS. It had this old, very bucktooth English nun who talked about art. And it was fantastic. And just this exposure to art, I would get into art, get into drawing and divine proportion. Guys who've worked for me or my friends who just go off and go in the knife business, I find their designs and their lines to be clunky and very spin off of my stuff, which is nothing but a compliment. I don't begrudge anybody for it, but their lines are clunky. I recommend taking some online art courses, learning how about proportion, get to where you can draw the human form. If you can draw the human form, you'll make a really cool proportion knife, I think. But don't go into a bunch of debt. And then the other thing you need to do while you're doing that is you need to build a good little website. It's got an e-commerce platform on it. It's never been as easy. It was way harder to do this 16 years ago when I started it. I was the web designer, the picture taker, everything. Learn how to take pictures of your knives. It's very hard to do because of the very bright finish and dark finish contrast. You're going to have to learn how to use Photoshop and maybe even use AI a little bit. So don't go into a bunch of debt to go into the knife business. You need blood. You need heart. You need sweat. You need calluses. You need dirty hands. You need a garage. You need obsession. You need a supportive spouse. I had all of those things, and then the knife company came. I would never recommend starting out thinking you're going to start a knife company. I would recommend following your passion for knives, and if you've got a knack for it, Providence will move, and the knife world will suck you in, and it'll be like the mafia. You can't get out once you get in. So that is some multi-million-dollar advice on becoming a knife maker from Greg Medford. I'm one of the guys in the country who makes a couple knives here and there out in the desert. The sun is going down. I'm getting ready. My daughter's back from college. And black boogers, you shouldn't have black boogers if you're wearing a proper breather. My daughter's back from college with one of her friends. I'm going to take my son and her friend out. We're going to go to a sports bar and eat some wings. I hope you all enjoy your weekend and have a great Mother's Day on Sunday. And peace out. Love all you lunatics. I'm out.